A few weeks ago, we looked at the cons that prisoners run when they're staging a prison break. Not surprisingly, they weren't all that different from scams that con artists use today outside of prison. I'm Jim Grinstead, and today we're going to look at the prison escape of the Texas Seven and how they not only broke out of jail, but remained on the run conning other people for a long time before law enforcement pinned them down. Aubrey Hawkins and his family weren't pleased when he walked away from dinner to answer a police dispatcher's call about a possible robbery at a sporting goods store near Dallas. What he found was a gang of 7 men. He was met by a hailstorm of bullets from a crew who'd been warned of his approach and failed to leave when warned. When they did leave, they drove their getaway car over his head 3 times to make sure the job was complete. This is the story of the Texas Seven, a group led by George Rivas, whose specialty was conning people into believing he was someone in authority and they should do as they were told. The Texas Seven overcame guards and played the system to drive out the back gate to 41 days of freedom. Had the men left the sporting goods store when they were warned, they may have remained on the run longer. But when they killed a police officer, law enforcement from around the country eagerly joined the search.
I'll never forget, it was the beginning of April of 2000. I was looking at myself in the mirror, and I decided that day that I was not going to die an old man in prison. I wasn't going to let myself be killed or crippled by the officers, or just die, just wither away. So I made a plan, and it involved having people with me who had the same mindset that we were not going to take out our personal issues on the officers that were going to be involved, and that I could trust once we were out on the other side of the fence, that they weren't going to continue doing anything that would hurt another person. So I began a screening process, a theoretical conversation when we're at rec or on the yard lifting weights or at work. And I would say, what would you do right now if you were to get out? And every person I picked said that they would just try to start over and get a job. They didn't care what it was. And just make a living, just to live now, to be free.
And Joseph Garcia in particular?
He was one of the first men I picked.
We planned for this for months. I mean, we went through scenarios in which, something else could happen and we, adjusted to it. The main thing is no one gets hurt. Play it smart. And if you do it smart, the system, then hey, you could just walk out of it,
That's George Rivas and Joseph Garcia in a conversation with Werner Herzog. Rivas was the brains behind the Texas Seven. Despite Rivas' gentle description of the men, law enforcement saw them differently.
Larry Harper serving a 50-year sentence for raping 3 women. Donald Newberry serving a 99-year sentence for armed robbery. Patrick Murphy, serving a 50-year sentence for raping a woman during a robbery. Randy Halperin, serving a 30-year sentence for beating his girlfriend's infant when the child wouldn't stop crying. Joseph Garcia, serving a 50-year sentence for stabbing his friend 19 times during a drunken brawl. Michael Rodriguez, serving a life sentence for hiring a hitman to kill his wife, and George Rivas, serving 17 life sentences for robbery and kidnapping, and an additional life sentence for violating his probation.
Rivas had nothing to lose. He was going to die in prison, and nothing was going to change that, unless he escaped. Rivas was smart and an experienced criminal. He knew how to pull off robberies and was good at it. But breaking out of a jail with 3,000 prisoners and 500 guards, well, that was something new. Rivas had always been observant. He cased the stores he robbed and knew employees' habits. He carefully picked the best times to strike, and that was often a closing time when the most money was in the store and there would be no customers. He often masqueraded as a security officer or someone higher up in the store's corporate ladder to get cooperation from employees. It turned out escaping the prison wasn't going to be much different. Court TV had another take on Rivas. It talked with Dr. Richard Coons, a court-appointed Austin psychiatrist, to examine Rivas prior to his trial. Although nobody had been injured during the commission of any of Rivas's previous crimes, Coons' opinion was that it had only been a matter of luck, not because of Rivas's kindness.
He demonstrates an unusual degree of interest, creativity, and intensity in his craft, Coons said. He is confident and arrogant. He is a mastermind and a leader. He has no conscience, and he does not speak the truth.
That's an important point to remember as you listen to the words of these men. They don't always speak the truth, especially to reporters. They've also had plenty of time to rehearse their stories before attorneys and juries. Rivas was eventually sentenced to 18 life terms in prison for his role in the Texas 7, 17 of which were ordered to run consecutively. The judge wanted to make certain he never left prison alive. The 13th was a cold December day. Inmates assigned to outdoor duties were kept inside. Those scheduled for inside jobs continued with their schedules. The crew, which had spent nearly a year planning its escape, knew the time was right. It would be easier to know where the prisoners and guards would be, and exceptions to the normal workflow wouldn't seem unusual. They'd also spent a year assembling the civilian uniforms, paperwork, and other items they'd need to get through the gate. The men were performing their jobs in the maintenance shop, and it was nearing 11 a.m. when the workers would return to their cells so the guards could have lunch. It was time for the plan to begin. The crew asked to stay behind to complete a job of waxing and sealing the floors, a job that would be easier with others gone. Since more guards would be returning to the area for lunch, and these were model prisoners, there was little security risk, so approval was given. Another inmate, Michael Ramirez, had made an appointment at the law library but had managed to stage himself outside the maintenance area and appointed himself as a lookout. His actions suddenly made him part of the crew. The first to fall was a maintenance supervisor. A machine needed to be moved, and Rivas went to ask the supervisor what he wanted to do with it. When the supervisor went to look, another inmate struck him on the back of the head with an axe handle, and he went down. Joseph Garcia, the most violent of the group, reportedly told the supervisor they were serious, and a few more years on their sentence wouldn't make a difference. The supervisor followed orders, removed his pants and shirt, his arms and legs were bound, he was gagged, and a pillowcase was placed over his head. He was then moved to a closet. The prisoners robbed him of his cash and began collecting whatever money they could to buy what they would need on the outside.
All the other officers going to be coming back from lunch, and they came back in twos and threes. So we were outnumbered, so what we did was wrestle them. We basically had three teams. Me and one other man were the primary team to take them down. When we were outnumbered, the second team took down whoever else, and then the third team was taking their clothes off and tying them up and putting them in a room. And it was hectic. It was a very hectic time. And at the same time, I'm answering the phone that's calling back there, and actually called in the count. When they called in for the count time at 1 o'clock, which is what I was waiting for, I had to call that in.
It took about 90 minutes for the prisoners to control the maintenance department. Their next job would be to get out of the building. While the guards were being secured, other members of the crew moved a pickup truck inside the building. They quickly built a small compartment in the bed of the truck that would hold all of the escapees, except the two dressed in civilian work clothes who would ride in the cab. Trash was scattered across the bed to cover their hiding place. To avoid setting off alarms, the guard tower was alerted that civilians would be driving the truck and would want to pass the gate. Shortly thereafter, the truck left the building and stopped at the gate. Civilians couldn't drive out, so the two inmates climbed out of the cab and went to the tower with the vehicle's keys and paperwork. One of the crew who stayed behind in the maintenance building called the tower to confirm that the truck had arrived. It had. All seemed in order.
Garcia at this time was calling the guard tower, and I had one of the men calling what they called the doghouse. Told him the moment you see me walk inside that guardhouse, make the phone calls. So Garcia was calling the guard tower, and he allowed me in. I walked in, and the phone's ringing, and the officer in there says, "Hey, yeah, he just walked up right now." And he hands me the phone, says, "It's for you." And I asked him, "Who is it?" And he says, "I don't know. I think it's maintenance." And I said, "What do they want? I just came from there." We're playing the little thing, the role. So I answered the phone, and we start talking. And I said, "Oh, you want the serial number?" So I have a part in my hand, and I start reading the serial number. While I'm doing this, I'm watching out the window to make sure there are no delivery trucks arriving. And I said, "Okay, Max, I'll talk to you later then." And I put the phone down. The word max or maximize was our word. When he told him maximize on the phone, Chino and the other two men took over the officer downstairs. Well, when I put the phone down, there was a .357 Magnum, among many others, in the holster. I grabbed it out of the holster, and I asked the officer, "Is this loaded?" And he looked surprised, said, "Of course it's loaded." I flipped open the cylinder, saw it was loaded, closed it, and I said, "Okay then, all I want is your cooperation now. I had control of your guard tower."
The Texas 7 grabbed 14 handguns, a rifle, a shotgun, and 239 rounds of ammunition. They also robbed the guards of any money they had on them. They forced the guards to tell them how to open the gate, and the 7 were off to freedom, a freedom that would last 41 days and leave a police officer dead. The crew made it to the nearby town of Kennedy, where they knew they had to ditch the prison truck. A new one was waiting for them, but it's unclear who put it there. About 4 p.m., the prison truck was found behind a Walmart store, and video taken from a nearby camera suggested the men got into a Chevrolet Suburban. It was clear the inmates could not have escaped without outside help to stage cars and other supplies. After the manhunt, attention quickly turned to Patsy Gomez, who had purchased the Chevrolet Suburban in the days before the escape. Further checking into her background attracted attention to Paul Rodriguez, who had co-signed a car loan with her 10 years earlier. Rodriguez was also a family friend of one of the escapees. Once confronted with that fact, Gomez spilled everything she knew. Investigators believe that Rodriguez gave Gomez $3,700 in cash to buy the Suburban. Investigators said Gomez bought the truck and drove it to the Walmart parking lot. She put the title and $300 cash beneath a rug in the vehicle and left the keys in the tailpipe. Gomez and Rodriguez were charged with 7 felony counts of permitting or facilitating the escape. By day 3, police were focused on El Paso, where they thought Rivas and his crew might try to slip into Mexico. Instead, the 7 headed toward Houston, planning more robberies to pick up cash and supplies. Following a familiar pattern, they rounded up employees and customers at a suburban Radio Shack. They robbed them of their money and cleaned the store of cash. They returned credit cards and keys to the hostages when asked. They also scooped up police scanners, radios, and other communications equipment. They planned to use some of it for themselves, and sell merchandise like VCRs for cash. Rivas's criminal career started at an early age in El Paso. One detective said he was so dangerous because he was so smart.
Rivas developed a successful strategy for robbing large stores. He would pose as a security guard, lure the employees in one room, and trap them.
So we knew after each and every one of these robberies that we had a same individual or group of individuals committing them, but we did not know who was committing them until the Toys R Us robbery.
George Rivas and his two accomplices went into the Westside Toys R Us store supposedly to interrogate an employee who had been stealing. But something goes wrong. Someone called the police at some point and hung up the phone. And well, when you call 911 and you don't see anything, they call back. And George Rivas was standing next to one of the employees, and she answered the phone, and the operator said, "How is everything?" And the assistant manager said, "No, everything's okay." And the operator was tipped off to the contradictory terms and sent out a police unit.
Another example came before they robbed the sporting goods store in Irving, Texas, where the officer was killed. Here's Rivas.
We were dressed as full security uniforms and IDs, 2 of us, and the rest were shoppers, except for one who was inside the vehicle. When I had gone to check out the store, or stake it out, case the joint as they call it here in Texas, they had a little tag on their window that said that their security was provided by ADT Security. Well, we were economizing all the money we had, so we would shop at the thrifty stores, like a Goodwill. At one of those stores, I noticed they had a rack of clothing, of used clothing, of all these different kind of clothing from businesses. I saw ADT Security, so I got 2 shirts, black pants, a jacket that had security, a cap. Then I cut out some pictures from a newspaper, Dallas newspaper, and went to a little Kinko's copy shop, and using their computer and their Xerox machine, I made these little security alerts talking about what they call snatch and grab. It's real popular, where a group of people walk into a store, grab all handfuls of clothing, and then run out the store into a truck. There's other stores in the little shopping area, and I named one of the stores that they had already been identified there had they seen them here at this store. And strangely, some of the employees were saying, "Yes, I've seen that person, I've seen this person." They were circling. I told them, "Please take this pin and circle everyone you recognize." And I did that in order to get all those employees to the front of the store.
Robbing the Radio Shack did not give the crew enough money, so after hiding for a week, they planned to hit an Oshman sporting goods store in Irving near Dallas. It was 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve. Police officer Aubrey Hawkins arrived at the front of the store and reported he didn't see anything and would drive around back. Inside, the escapees were gathering about $70,000 in cash, plus winter clothing and supplies. The police scanners they stole earlier alerted them that Officer Hawkins had been called out front. Here's George Rivas with Werner Herzog.
So it turns out that a person that was waiting to pick up one of their employees, her boyfriend, in fact, she saw something not right. She called one of her friends, and to make a long story short, they called the police. Well, I had Murphy outside listening to the police scanner, so he notified me. We were hooked up just like this with walkie-talkies, and I let everyone know that if I say we're leaving, you stop what you're doing. Don't keep on grabbing nothing else, just leave. And I already had pickup points. I had an extra vehicle parked behind the business. I got back there, and they were not there. They were still inside the store. For 4 minutes, Mr. Herzog, and those 4 minutes changed the lives of all of us, and that poor officer and his family. I was yelling into the walkie-talkie. All this time, Murphy outside is telling me that the dispatcher is calling more police officers, sending them over there. And all at this time, all they knew was a suspicious activity. They didn't know what was going on. They didn't know it was us. It was just suspicious activity. I wouldn't leave the guys there. So I stayed there yelling to the walkie-talkie. They finally came out. As they were coming out, the officer was already getting ready to pull up on us. We couldn't get out. So posing as security, I was going to get as close to him and take him over, take his gun, handcuff him inside the vehicle, and then we'll leave. I reached back to pull the ID out to show the badge and the ID. So he'll recognize it. He'll feel comfortable with it when I come towards him. As I'm getting closer, I see his hand coming up like this. I drew my weapon at that time, and I shot through the windshield and shot the right shoulder. I yelled, "Don't move again." And that's when I saw flashes. He had his window rolled up, and I saw these yellow flashes like this, and then I heard the sound. And I felt the piercing pain right through my stomach. And that's when I fired the 3 fatal shots. I fired 3 more shots, and I know it was in the head area.
And you were also shot?
Yes, he shot at me 7 times. The authorities say that
You mean the police officer,
Yes.
or was it your own people?
Well, the police say my own people shot me, but that was impossible. They were behind me. I have the wounds in front of me.
You were shot where?
Through my stomach. I had turned to the side. I'm like this. I got hit through the stomach, and then through my leg, front to the back, and my stomach in and out also. So it's strange that the law of physics changes in Dallas County when it comes to bullet trajectories.
Forensic evidence tells a different story. Rivas most likely was hit by his own men, who opened a barrage of gunfire. The police officer never had a chance to draw his weapon.
Hawkins' patrol car had blocked the getaway car. The rest of the crew was now fleeing the store and began shooting at the patrol car. Rivas was bleeding heavily from a bullet wound to the stomach. One of the men tried to drag Hawkins out of the patrol car so it could be moved out of the way. That's when backup arrived. It was a standoff between 4 police and the heavily armed crew. Police decided the issue didn't have to be decided there and then, so they backed off, letting the escapees leave to be captured another day. That capture would come in Colorado. They fled to Pueblo, but didn't blend in with the community. From there, they went into the mountains west of Colorado Springs, where the escapees acquired a Jeep and a Pace Aero RV. They rented space at an RV park.
I couldn't tell people I'm George Rivas from the Texas 7. These are my friends. Just give us a chance. I couldn't tell them that.
Pretty much standard as everybody. They told me they were traveling Christians, and they were looking for a place to park their motorhome for a week.
Some of the people that lived there were somewhat or quite religious, actually. And one of them started attending Bible studies.
When the Texas 7 very first came, I invited them all to the Bible study, and Harper came in and explained, each person is different in their own way. So them guys were doing their own thing, and Harper was just real glad to come on down, and he fit right in.
And Rivas, he was a very nice, very well-spoken. Harper told me, basically, he was the leader of their little group, and he was, and Harper was kind of the finance guy in their group. He paid the rent. He's the one who always had the money to pay stuff.
They changed their appearances and as part of blending into the new community. They grew their hair out longer, fashioned beards and mustaches, bleached their hair.
They stayed there for 4 weeks, growing out their hair and changing their appearance, until one night when the television show America's Most Wanted did a program about the escape. Now the chase was national.
A call came in. They had received some information from the sheriff up in Colorado. An individual had gone in saying that they were in a trailer park up there.
They pulled in a Suburban, told me that they were looking for a site, which is typical. They told me they were Christian men coming back from a mission. They were from Texas.
The escapees were feeling safer, but the police were well along with their plans to take the RV. The problem for the escapees? They'd been recognized.
January 21st, a friend came to me, had just gone to church with Harper and was like, I think this is the Texas 7. So we got out to America's Most Wanted website, and every picture that I scrolled up, I knew every guy. I mean, it was just absolute shock.
We notified Texas First to confirm the identifiers. And before you know, we had more law enforcement in this office than we've seen in a long time.
That evening, Sheriff Fenn and a police sergeant drive an unmarked car to within 50 yards of the escaped convict's motor home.
Looking at it when we exited, my sergeant informed me, he said, I feel this is a tactical nightmare to attempt this in the dark, number one, because they do have the high ground. There's no way that we can get above them, especially in the dark. So we came back to the office and we set up a loose perimeter.
Then, more bad news for the sheriff. He receives a call from the surveillance team. One of the cars that the 7 owned was missing. With some of the group unaccounted for, the situation becomes more complicated. By morning, all law enforcement teams are in place. Sheriff Fenn drives his own motorhome, dubbed the Trojan Horse for this mission, into the campground. 4 members of the FBI tactical unit are concealed inside the RV.
I took the plates off, put a set of Utah license plates on it to make myself appear as if I'm a tourist checking into the campground.
They knew Harper, who locals called the preacher, routinely came out for coffee in the morning. The FBI agents plan to jump him when he emerges.
He hadn't come down for coffee. Sheriff Fenn and the SWAT teams were all in place. We had SWAT teams in the building, on the hill, on the mountain, located all over the place, and he didn't come down for coffee.
The FBI decides to send the campground owner to investigate the situation.
I drove around to each trailer, telling them all we were running out of water. They didn't know, but I actually wanted to see who was home, who wasn't home, who to let the SWAT team know who they need to get out or who they need to protect. And then got up to Site 17 where the Texas 7 were.
At about 10 o'clock in the morning, 3 subjects left the campground in a vehicle. The units on the highway were notified that they had left.
Rivas, Garcia, and Rodriguez are driving the Cherokee. The agents follow them as they pull into a gas station. Then, the SWAT team makes their move.
They moved in from every direction, ordered them out of their cars, throw their weapons down.
Rivas is in the driver's seat with 3 handguns strapped to his body and his foot on the gas pedal.
A split second went through my mind saying, I got this gun here.
The standoff lasts only seconds, and George Rivas surrenders without a fight.
Police moved in on the RV, and Randy Halpern, who was inside, came out and told police that Larry Harper was still inside with all the weapons and ammunition. Harper said he wanted to call his father before coming out, but before long a shot was fired. Harper committed suicide. As of 2025, all of the remaining Texas 7 are awaiting execution or have been executed, except for Randy Halpern, who was granted a new trial because of judicial bias. Rivas was executed in 2012. He was the first of the 6 living escapees to die and refused all appeals to his sentence. WFAA reporter Jason Whiteley was one of the reporters allowed to attend Rivas' execution. These are some of his tweets.
11:45 a.m. George Rivas spent this morning meeting with friends behind glass at Texas's death row. 11:50 a.m. Guards will soon move George Rivas from death row about 40 miles to the Walls unit for a scheduled 6 p.m. execution. 12:47 p.m. Arriving at the Walls unit, George Rivas goes to a holding cell 15 feet away from the death chamber. He is alone and unrestrained and can use a phone. 3:49 p.m. Texas no longer offers a special last meal to condemned inmates. At 4 o'clock, George Rivas will get the same meal the rest of the unit gets today. 4:30 p.m. George Rivas's appeals have all been denied. Clemency is denied. The state says attorneys for the convicted killer do not plan a last-minute challenge to the scheduled 6 o'clock execution. 4:42 p.m. The widow of Irving police officer Aubrey Hawkins, who was killed by George Rivas, will not attend the execution. She told News 8 that she felt no closure after being present at the last execution of a Texas 7 gang member in 2009. 5:03 p.m. 3 drugs are used in the lethal injection cocktail. That used to cost about $86, but the price has recently skyrocketed to more than $1,300 because the state has been forced to resort to a more expensive substitute for one of the drugs being used. 5:48 p.m. Guards moved George Rivas from his holding cell 15 feet to the execution chamber. The lethal injection procedure is scheduled to begin a few minutes after 6 o'clock. 5:59 p.m. George Rivas will be strapped to a gurney, arms extended, and an IV for the lethal injection will be inserted in both arms. Once he's strapped down, the warden will call for witnesses to enter the 2 observation rooms. (6:26 p.m.) Texas 7 gang leader George Rivas was executed by lethal injection at 6:22 p.m. for the murder of Irving police officer Aubrey Hawkins. 7:07 p.m. Prior to his execution, George Rivas told his new wife he loved her. "I am grateful for everything in my life. I love you. God bless. I am ready to go." Rivas was calm, smiling, and appeared to be at peace with what was to follow.
If you enjoy the show, please tell your friends and encourage them to listen. And give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen. It's important to help people find the show. And if you want to share feedback with me, I have a feature on our website that allows you to send me a text. To protect your privacy, I can't text back, but I want to hear what you have to say, and you may get a shout out on the show. You can also find me on Instagram at Scams and Cons or Facebook at Scams & Cons. Thanks for listening.